Hello and welcome to a history class here on Park TV, the Pride of Africa. I am Adusi Poku, and today we are learning about the story of Otumfuo Agyemang Prempeh I. His life before installment, his reign as the 13th Asante king, and also his exile and return to Ghana or the Gold Coast. To help me in this discussion is teacher Kantanka, and we will take this short break. When we return, we begin with our discussion.
Pack TV, the pride of Africa.
Welcome once again. I am Adusi Poku. Teacher, you are welcome.
Thank you.
So, who was Otumfuo Agyemang Prempeh I?
Otumfuo Agyemang Prempeh I was the 13th king of Ashanti. He was born as Kokudua Asemu. The word Asemu here means Asem during war.
Wow. Okay, so who were his parents?
His father was the son of Asantehene Kokudua the first.
Wow.
Called Jembibi, Kosi Jembibi, who was also the Ayebiachre Hene of Kumasi. The mother was the queen of Ashanti, Nana Yechan. That is the 10th queen of Ashanti.
That was the mother. Okay, so did he have any siblings at all?
Certainly, he did, because the mother gave birth to 13 children.
Wow.
And so if he had brothers and 13 children, brothers and sisters, these are the siblings.
Okay, so what was Prempeh's line of succession?
Well, the mother's mother was also the queen of Ashanti, Afiokobi. So Afiokobi the first was Nana Prempeh's grandmother, maternal.
Okay.
Then his uncles, who became Ashanti kings, were King Kofi Kakari of Ashanti,
Okay.
then King Mensa Bones of Ashanti, who were all his mother's brothers, so uncles.
So where was Kwakudua or Prempeh the first? Where was he born, and even when?
He was born in the 1870s, and certainly in Kumasi, where his parents lived.
Okay, so you talked about when he was born. So at what age did he become the Asantehene?
At a very tender age of 15, 16.
Wow. And at that tender age, they still gave him the mantle to leave a kingdom, a very powerful kingdom as the Asante.
Yes, I think before he was officially confirmed the king of Ashanti, he had turned 18. But it started, the installment process started somewhere 15, 16.
Okay, so I also understand there were some constitutional crises. There were issues, pockets of issues leading to his installment. Can you elaborate a bit about that?
Well, that is true. There was no peace in Ashanti. Ashanti, as a matter of fact, in those years, had broken into its component parts. A lot of states wanted to secede. A lot had seceded, and it started with King Kofi Kakari in 1874, when the British defeated the Ashantis for the first time in war.
The Sagranti War.
The Sagranti War, yes. So when that happened, people took advantage of that. There was certainly weakness in the kingdom, the administrative weakness. There was also poverty, because if you go through war, of course, things would not be as it were before the war. So there was poverty, there was this agreement misunderstanding a whole lot of things. So this led to Asantehene Kofi Kakari being destooled. Okay, and then his brother, junior brother, took over. His junior brother was Mensa Bonsu, who also took over the reins of administration. Things did not go well. He was also destooled. And then the mother, Kofi Kakari's mother, or Mensa Bonsu's mother, who was Prempeh's grandmother, was also destooled. That was Fiokobi, the first, was also destooled. So these coming together, and lack of stability in the nation called Asante brought about constitutional crisis.
So in spite of all these crises, how was it managed?
Yeah, it was managed. When Kofi Kakari was destooled, Mensa Bonsu took over. He was destooled. Then Prempeh I's brother, called Kokudua, the second, became the king of Asante. But it did not last long. He died soon after his installment. That is, he was only 40 days on the stool.
40 days?
Yes.
I think that would be the shortest.
Yes, 40 days on the stool.
So,
when he died, then they had to look for someone to succeed him, or someone to take over the administration, and fell on Asantehene Prempeh I, Kokudua Asemu. So he was even named, or he chose the name Kokudua III, and later on changed to Prempeh.
Okay. So in spite of all the issues you talked about, poverty, you talked about instability and a whole lot. So how did it affect the Asante nation?
Well, a nation that was now united, or even every nation that lacks unity, cannot move forward. In those years, powerful states like Okufu had broken away. Powerful states like Mampong, Suta, Nkransa.
They all broke away.
Yes, they were all in support of the contender of Asantehene Prempeh I. Asantehene Prempeh I had a contender, that is his uncle, was Achorobwana. And these nations supported Achorobwana. Then Prempeh was supported by Bekwai, Ofinso, Ejiso, and Jabing. Jabing, as a matter of fact, was not of himself, because Jabing had fought a war with Kumasi and had traveled, and a lot of them had run away to the eastern region. So a small group of Jabins were in any way in support of Prempeh I. So this is the conflict.
So what made the British, because all these things we are talking about had to do with the British, so what made them have interest in even seizing our king and our queen?
Well, they had interest because in 1874, the whole of Europe had met in Berlin to discuss and decide how to take control of Africa, or share Africa. That is normally called partitioning of Africa. Share it among themselves. So among the countries that took part in the sharing were Germany, France, Britain, Spain, Portugal. So they shared Africa among themselves. And in sharing, Ashanti resisted. Ashanti was among some of the African nations that did not want any imposition, or that did not want any colonial master. They wanted to rule themselves.
Teacher, so Asante wasn't just a chieftaincy location, but it was a nation, a country on itself.
It was a nation, call it a country, that stretched to Ivory Coast, So almost about a quarter of Ivory Coast was part of Ashanti.
Wow.
And it's shared border with Burkina Faso. And shared border, a part of Togo was also Ashanti. And the whole of Ghana,
country.
yes.
Wow.
And the whole of what you know today called Ghana was all part of the Ashanti nation before the coming in of the Europeans to partition Africa.
That is in the 1870s.
Yes, between 1874 and 1890. So when they decided to share Africa among themselves, the French started from Ivory Coast and then were creeping in to take control of some of the Ashanti lands. So certainly some of the Ashanti lands fell in the hands of the French. The Germans started from Togo and Benin, so a portion of Ashanti sharing border with Togo and Benin fell to the Germans. Then the coastal side, which is now the Fanti, the Ga, the part of Ever, then Denchira, Wassa, Sefshi, all the Akan states, after the 1874 war, had fallen to the British. Okay,
so the British and the British to the south, the Germans to the east,
yes.
and the France or the French to the west.
Yes, and they were still creeping in to take control of states.
What about the north?
Yeah, the north, there was a clear border, that is sharing border with Burkina Faso. So Dagbon and Gonja were all part of the Ashanti Kingdom.
Wow.
At the point in time.
PAC TV, the pride of Africa.
Teacher, how did the season of our leaders, our king, our queen, how did it take place?
Well, it took place gradually, starting from the Berlin Conference, where European leaders had met to find a way to divide and share Africa. Forgot to mention, Belgium was present, America was also present. Yeah, in their decision to share Africa. Okay, so they had to adopt a number of ways. Let's not forget that when Ashanti was defeated in 1874, there was a pact. They signed a pact asking Ashanti to pay for all the war, the cost of the war. So, wow. So that was 50,000 ounces of gold.
Then?
Yeah, then. And Ashanti paid part of it. Britain was very serious in trying to break down Ashanti for the last time. So they adopted strategies. One of it was to divide and rule, play all the other nations that Ashanti had agreed to give independence to, like Denchira, Wassa, Sefshi, Sen, Chifo, Hemai, Abuakwa, Achim, Kutuku, Achim Bosome, Accra, the Ga, Gadangbe, all these had their independence from the Ashanti after the defeat of the sovereignty of Ashanti. It was part of the agreement. Okay. And Britain did not leave them alone. They played them against the Ashanti and still wanted to take more of the states, like the Kwau. Kwau had been taken. Ashanti was fighting over to get back Kwau. So apart from that, they had penetrated into the very center.
Mainlanders.
Yeah, the mainlanders, and to divide the people, convince them, pay bribe to some of the chiefs to decide not to join the Ashanti Kingdom. And it was thus that made Mampong, Bekwai, Nsuta, Nkransa, Atebubu, all decided to break away.
Wow.
So, and the German state that went to the Ivory Coast, the French. So, this is, they had made weak the whole nation. So, Prempeh came and was trying to reunite. And they noticed that Prempeh had gone far to reunite and even go back to claim some of the states like Kou and others. Prempeh had also initiated a plan to negotiate to bring back some of the states that had broken away, to cross the River Pra to the other side. So Kokofu was, they negotiated for Kokofu to come back. So they negotiated, yes, they negotiated for Drabin to come back. They negotiated for Adanse to come back. So with all these people coming back, Britain felt that it was not going to be successful in trying to dismantle the kingdom. So they wanted a way to attack Ashanti. So again, in 1874, it was agreed that any time Ashanti was to do anything, they had to bring in the British. They had to rep. Yeah, it was part of the agreement. So Ashanti was actually putting itself together, and then when Prempeh had become the king of Ashanti, they had to inaugurate it. During the inauguration, they had to invite the British to come. And when they were coming, they came in as coming to take over the reins of affairs.
Okay, so they came with
a wicked plan.
Not to celebrate.
Yeah, not to celebrate, but to take over. So they came in with 20,000 soldiers.
Then?
Yes.
We are talking about 100 and over.
Yes, yes. 20,000 soldiers, out of which 1,000 was British, white British. That is to say, the Europeans, they are brought for themselves. They came in as officers to control or to lead the other 19,000 soldiers who were Hausas and Gold Coast.
Gold Coast frontier.
Yes, yeah, they brought all of them in. Some.
That had to do with Sierra Leoneans.
Yes, they were all part of it. When you're talking about British Frontier Force, the Europeans, apart from the European being officers, the main body of soldiers were the Hausas from Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Gambia, and all the rest. So these were those who came together to form the bulk of the British Army. So when they came, upon noticing that they had come to fight, Asante decided not to fight, appealed to his people not to raise arms against the British. So when they agreed not to fight, Asante Prempeh offered himself to be taken away and then to leave Asante alone for the Asante people to govern themselves. But Britain had a different view. After seizing the Asante, they also seized the Queen of Asante, who was Prempeh's mother, and then Prempeh's father was also seized. They didn't end there. They also seized Mampoihene, Ofeso, Ejeso, and then Asafo, Bantama,
All the Virgin.
all the Virgin, Champem Hene, Oyoko Hene, Domina Sehene, Akomfere Hene, and a host of them were all seized and taken away to first to Elmina Castle, and then second to Sierra Leone, and then finally to the Seychelles Island.
Okay, so it wasn't as if they took only the Asante king or the queen, but some.
Yeah, yes. Those mentioned were all taken away.
Okay, so how was the group transported? We know that there weren't any cars and even aeroplane those days. So how were they transported?
Well, they went in two waves. That is, those who went with Asante Prempeh, and then after another wave, who also went with Yasantua as their leader. So there were two groups that went, two waves of transport. But when they were going, it was a peaceful, because Ashanti did not raise arms against the British. They agreed to go with their king. Yes, so their wives, their children, some of their wives, some of their children accompanied them. And so they went, but Prempeh was fairly treated. We would say about 60 people were taken away. A lot of them were chiefs and royals. They were taken away. Asantehene's brother, called Agyemang was also taken away.
This is PAG TV, the Pride of Africa, and we are learning about the story of Agyemang Prempeh I, who was the 13th Asante king, and also the story of his exile and return to Gold Coast. This is what we are discussing, and helping me to do this discussion is teacher Kantanka. And this is PAG TV, the Pride of Africa. We take this short break. When we come back, we continue with our discussion.
You're from Kwame Edinkra. Oh, share PAG TV, Nyansa wom, Abakusem wom, Nije wom, Edisian Bebre wom, Yana Nyamere, Nasuan de Kakra. Oh, PAG TV, Yenina Yeshe, Tibomodi also ship.
PAG TV, the Pride of Africa.
You're still watching History Class here on PAG TV, the Pride of Africa. And the story has to do with the issue or the life of Prempeh I, Agyemang Prempeh I, who was the 13th Asante king. His life before enthronement, his reign, and also the exile and return. Not just him, but a couple of people who were also exiled to the Seychelles Island. Teacher, you are welcome once again.
Thank you.
I've seen some couple of sketches that the Asante Hene and the Asante Queen were kneeling before the British governor. Is that story true? Can you confirm that?
Well, as much as I know, it could not be true. I think it was just a propaganda sketch. They wanted to create the impression that Asante Hene had bowed fully. The Queen Mother had also bowed, begging to be free, to be forgiven. But why would they beg? Because they had agreed to be taken away. So what was the kneeling down for? Again, British soldiers had cameras, powerful cameras, which they used to take pictures, proper pictures of a lot of things. Such an important occasion, such an important ingredient of whatever happened, if indeed it did, they would have taken a right, they wouldn't have stopped to complete everything before going back to sketch. So I think it was only a propaganda sketch.
Okay, so before we went for the break, they were taken to Elmina Castle. Why did they decide to move them from Elmina to Sierra Leone, and also from Sierra Leone to an island?
Well, whilst they were in Elmina, Ashanti people or Ashantis were trooping to Elmina to demand the release of their king, but in a diplomatic fashion, right? So they noticed that the number of people trooping in could turn to something else. So they decided to move them to Sierra Leone, a longer distance from the coast. So at Sierra Leone, they spent more than 2 years. And then, whilst in Sierra Leone, they decided to complete their decision to take control over the Ashanti Kingdom. So, although they had taken control and given a lot of positions to some of their cronies, some of the people who whom they believe would sing their voice. Still, they were not satisfied, because whilst in Sierra Leone, Ashantis were still walking to Sierra Leone to negotiate.
Even those in Ivory Coast.
Yes. So they felt that, what on earth is making the Ashanti people not to succumb completely, but still negotiating. So the fear was that if they are not careful, they were not careful then, Ashanti could even move troops to come and demand their king. So they said, what on earth is actually uniting the Ashanti to this point? Where they had reached, they thought that they would break down, but they didn't. So they noticed that it is something that united them. So that thing which united them should be taken over. That was the Golden Stool. So they sent troops down to come to Ashanti in the absence of all the people that they had taken away to come and demand the Golden Stool. Just about the same time, Prempeh, Asantehene Prempeh had sent ambassadors, envoys to Britain to go and negotiate with the British Queen to let the British governor keep away from Ashanti affairs. Again, to also negotiate to get investors to come and invest in Ashanti. So investment was one of the key reasons why Asantehene sent about 13 envoys to Britain. So all these important officials were absent at the time Britain had come to collect the Golden Stool or demanded the Golden Stool. So Ashanti was actually very weak. But people often say the Ashanti were afraid to fight the British that had come to take over the Golden Stool. That is not the case. Of course, the men were not afraid. The men had decided not to fight because their king had told them not to fight. That's one. Two, the king who was to lead any time during war was led by kings, and all their war generals have been taken away. Bantama was absent, Asafo was absent, Mampong was absent, so a lot of these, so they were actually not in the verge of fighting. And that is where Yasantua came in. That, okay, if the men are not ready, they, the women, will be ready. So that gingered them up. And so the war was fought, but it was not fought by the women. So those who were, yes. So those who are often saying, or who keep saying the men were afraid, who fought? It is still the men. So that clause or constant saying that the men were afraid should be dropped. The men were not afraid, but they were divided. And then some series of wars had taken place. So those who had been defeated, like Okufu, like Nkransa, like Nsuta, like Mampong, had all been defeated. So you expect those who had been defeated to go and to join. Of course, they are rather happy that their leader who fought them had been taken away. So these were some of the reasons why the men were not ready to fight.
And eventually Yasantua was also taken. Yes,
after the war lasted for more than 6 months, getting to I think the 7th month or even more, when the British, they fought currently, because the British had to run away from the castle where they were taking refuge. They ran away, so they were defeated until the British brought in the Indians, and then
the Indians also came.
yeah, they came
To
to fight on behalf of because Britain was an empire,
yes,
with India part of the empire. Jamaica also came to fight for the British.
Wow.
So this is how they were able to break. Yes.
Okay, so you're still live on Park TV, the Pride of Africa, and you're watching history class. Teacher, some people are of the view that the issue of Yasantua leading the war it's not something that really happened.
Yeah, but that is their own view. But the actual view or actual case that took place, written down by historians, suggests that Yasantua was moving from war front to war front to organize his men, even sometimes firing generals that were not fighting well, and replacing them. So would you say there is nowhere in history that the war generals themselves or organizers of the war themselves were leading the war? They were actually protected, because if those who were the organizers of the war or leaders of the war were captured, the war had ended. So Yasantua was actually not in the trenches, but he was moving from war front to war front, organizing the war, directing the war, and supervising the war. So he was a war general.
Pack TV, the pride of Africa.
Before we went for the break, teacher was letting us in with regards to the wave of people who moved with Prempeh I. Now I want to find out from you, teacher, who were the people who moved with Yasantua during the second wave?
Right. Yasantua challenged the British. That is, she led the Ashanti soldiers to fight the British. Unfortunately, the British won. That means they conquered the Ashanti soldiers, but they did not win the war. They did not win because the motive was to seize the Golden Stool, but they could not lay hands on the Golden Stool.
Okay, so they conquered the soldiers, but couldn't win.
Yeah, couldn't win the war. The motive was to seize the Golden Stool, which they couldn't lay hands on.
Okay.
So in that war, the Ashantis claimed they won the war. Okay. So after losing the war, the soldiers were arrested. The leaders of the army, Ashanti army, were arrested. Some of them were court-martialed and killed. They try them as soldiers, and one of the generals, who was Odumase Hene, that is Uadumase, near Sunyai. He was Kwabenachere. He was killed, court-martialed and killed, and others too. A host of them were taken to add up to the number of people living in the Seychelles Island. That is, Ashantis who had been exiled to the Seychelles Island. Yasantua herself was exiled to the Seychelles Island. Kukufu Hene at that time, then the Drea Ongwanta Hene at that time, then Kontanse Hene at that time, Aguna Hene at that time. Then one of the war generals called Kofi Fofie, Yasantua's general, was also captured. Akropon Hene, Akropon in Kumasi, where they have the Buakwa. Also the Mbunyure Hene, called Kosim Pumpunzio, was also taken away. Now, Bunyure Hene, for some reasons, I think, they didn't feel well to travel to Sierra Leone and Seychelles Island, so it was brought back. But the rest were taken away. So about more than 15 of them, usually they will give the number to be 13 or 14. but we don't have to take the number in its absolute physical sense. The number they will give to us will be more than that. But they always wanted to cut down. If 100 of their soldiers died, they will say 20. They just want to create the impression that they are superior. You couldn't kill many of them. So they took away a whole lot of people, but they told us the first wave was about 55. The second wave of exile was about 13, they say. But from the standpoint of experiments, experience and observation, you notice that it was more often than not twice or even thrice the number they were mentioned. So to them, or according to them, 55 were taken away during the first wave with Prempeh leading them, Santehene Prempeh leading them. Then the second wave with Yasantua leading them was also 13, they say. But I will not put the number at 13. I think it was more.
Okay, so now Yasantua has also joined Prempeh I. How was life in Seychelles for them?
Well, it will not be normal life because you have been moved from your own way of life to another place, a very long distance, thousands of miles away from your own land. The people you're going to meet there are certainly not people of your caliber, people of your color. It was, Seychelles was made up of Europeans. It was European of French descent, English descent, and other Europeans. So living among these people will not make you feel at ease. So certainly, but they had to manage.
And it wasn't just Ashantis who were taken to Seychelles, but some other Africans also went there.
Yeah, but they lived in their camp. You know, the Seychelles is made up of a series of islands. So if other groups were taken, maybe not on the same island, but Santehene Prempeh and his people, first wave and second wave, all lived in Mahe.
And Mahe happens to be the
capital of Seychelles.
Okay, so this is more than 100 years. Do we have some traits of Asante still remaining in Seychelles even as at now?
Yes, of course. A lot of things went into... they wrote down some of the things that happened. Whatever they wrote down will remain. Ashanti people went there with their religion. They went there, they were grown-ups.
They had their own religion.
Yeah, so they went there with their religion, they went there with their language, they went there with their culture, tradition, they went there with their history, they went there with a way of life. Because if one offended the other, they sat down and tried the cases the way they would have tried it when they were in their homelands. So these sort of life were all observed and documented.
The issue of Akude,
they celebrated Akweside when it was Akweside. Wow. They celebrated Akude when it was Akude. Other days which needed to be celebrated were all celebrated.
Is it possible so many people moving from Ghana or Gold Coast or Asante to Seychelles, living there for about more than 20 years? Is it possible that some of them also gave birth?
It is not. Is it possible? It happened. Asantehene himself married other women in addition to his own wives. So they have these traces. Some of these grandchildren are still living there. And anytime something is to be celebrated in Asante within Ghana, they come in their numbers to take part. So they still have Asante people living in Seychelles.
With Ashanti names?
Yes, with Ashanti names, because some of them are called Prempeh, some of them would be called Jembibi, some of them would be, yeah, because,
Poku.
yes, sure. So that's what happened. And they still have them there.
Wow. Okay, so now our king is not here. Major generals are also not here. The Queen of Ejeso, who also stood in to ensure that we resist any oppressors who will be coming, she is also not here. How was Asante governed?
Well, Asante was governed by the British. They had taken over the reins of affairs. They appointed people to be chiefs. Yeah, even if they were not royals. So these are some of the setbacks or some of the bad things that happened during the British administration. For all the almost 30 years that they were absent, the British had chosen people to help them rule.
Their favorite.
Yeah, their favorite. So Ejesohene was not a royal of Ejeso called Yahua. Was the chief of Ejeso, the paramount chief of Ejeso. They appointed by the British. Kwame Tua was Jaswahene, that is Buabasa. He didn't come from the family. So Chamehene was not. So they appointed people they trusted to rule.
They took over our palace.
Yes, they bombarded our palace, and those who were ruling were actually ruling from their respective homes. The palace at that time was situated at a place where they called the Military Museum. So the British, broke everything down and then established something there as their headquarters.
So where Maisha Palace is today,
It's not the original palace.
but it was
It was in Adum, where they have the military museum. That was the palace.
wow. So what triggered their return to the Gold Coast?
Well, many factors. It was difficult for the British to rule. So they felt that,
In spite of taking all these people,
yes, they couldn't. So they felt that, okay, they should come back. Again, Ashanti, groups of Ashanti were pressing hard to have their king back, negotiating and then appealing to institution. Okay. So British Parliament also split into two. There were the Labour and the Conservative. They were debating, and Labour was always on the side of bringing back Prempeh to his home. So these things went on. Asante Kotoko Society had been established in 1916. They were also writing and fighting for
the return of
the return. So Ashanti's Prempeh himself was writing letters upon letters demanding to be returned to his home.
Was he schooled
Yes.
in Seychelles?
Yes, whilst he was there, he was schooled. He was night school. That is, he had grown up enough, so there was no need going to sit in the classroom. But he was taught in his own house by teachers.
And he was able to write a book.
Yeah, he was able to read, write, speak English, and then even to the point of writing a book, entitled "The History of the Ashanti Kings and the Whole of the Country Itself."
The whole of the Ashanti country.
Yes.
That time there wasn't anything called Ghana.
Yes.
Wow.
So this is what happened. So he was schooled. So they came back home as Anglicans. That means as Christians. Some of their language had been replaced with English. They spoke Chinglish. They added English. Yes, I added English to some of their local languages, And then history was distorted. Again, culture was also distorted. At least they came back as literates. They also came back with different names. They were given English names. So the king himself, Prempeh, was called Edward. Was baptized. Yeah, was called Edward. The queen was called Elizabeth.
Nana Yacha.
Yeah, Nana Yacha was given, yes. Wow. And then Yasantua was called Victoria.
Yasantua.
Yes. So the others took English names because in those days, if you didn't have English name, you could not be baptized.
After they were baptized and Christianized, did they continue celebrating their Ukude and their Kweside or their...
They did, because it had become part of them. They went there, grown-ups. So they did not give out, maybe their children and grandchildren will not have much to do with the culture, but they did.
After 100 years, do we still have people who engages in Akweside, Ukude, and naming their children after the local names, day names? Can we have some of these things still in Seychelles?
Yes. I think when they came, some of them were called Prempeh and Agyemang and all that. So, of course, their grandchildren will also have the same names.
But not with the celebration.
Well, I don't know about that, but I think those ones were written down. So if they will learn it in school. Because not long ago, some of them came and told the king of Ashanti that they were going to establish a museum. Of course, what are they going to establish a museum with? With items that came from the king and all the people who went with him.
So the museum will be established not in Ghana?
No, in Seychelles.
So, teacher, you were talking about Asante Kotoko Society being established in 1916. Apart from those bodies, did the Gold Coast legislation or the government, did they also play any role in ensuring that Prempeh also returns to the Gold Coast?
Yes, they did, because there's evidence to the fact that the Gold Coast Legislative Assembly spoke about how bad it was to keep Prempeh outside his own home. They spoke about it, and it's documented that members of the Legislative Assembly, like Togo Siri, like Nana Oforiacha of Achimabuakwa, and others who were lawyers like from Cape Coast, also added their voice. But it was not as intense as the Ashantis themselves, or the British Parliament, or the king himself. So sometimes they want to give the credit to those who just added their voice. And that shouldn't be the case.
Okay, so it wasn't as if the king was comfortable, but he also ensured that...
Yeah, he wrote a series of letters that it should be... Again, the British could not rule well. They could not control the people. So they wanted... There had been another form of governance called indirect rule. They wanted to rule through the kings, and the king was not there. So they agreed that Prempeh should come back so that they can rule through him.
So their repatriation, how did it happen? How was it? What was the mood?
Well, it was agreed upon in 1924 that they had to bring him back. And when they were bringing him back, they had to negotiate on terms. One of the terms was that he was not coming back as the king of Ashanti, he was coming back as the king of Kumasi. But the Ashantis didn't care, because to them, they had not destroyed their king. They still had their king. So he came and they accepted him as the king of Ashanti. So if the British were accepting him as a king of Kumasi, that was their own headache.
Yeah. Because if you are, you become a Kumasi Hindi before. And
yeah. So they brought him, and then the crowd that cheered him up was so intense that they didn't even let him come straight home. They asked him to. They came to Takoradi by ship, and then from Takoradi to Kumasi by train. So the train, instead of coming to the train station, the major train station at Kajetia, they rather agreed that he should alight at somewhere Kasi. Yes, Kasi, so that they would have to transport him by another means to the palace.
Wow.
So when he was coming back, the arrangement had been made. A new palace had been built for him. But he disagreed to go and live in the new palace that British had built for him. It was a very small palace. It was not as big as what he was occupying. But, well, so when he came, he went and stayed with Asafohene. Yes. For almost a year. First at Asafo, then a house at a dome called Prempeh, Prempeh the First.
That's a Kumasehini.
Yes, a Kumasehini house. The house was named Kumasehini. He lived there for some time and agreed, negotiated with them to pay the building that they had built for him at Manjia. He wanted to pay for it before he moved in. He did pay for it and then later moved in.
So he didn't want to just go and live in
No. He didn't like the gifts. He had to pay for it, and he did pay for it.
Still on the issue of Prempeh the First, the 13th Asante king, who was exiled, and also at this point he had returned from the Seychelles Island. I want to find out from teacher if Yasantua came with him.
No, a lot of them died, including Yasantua, the queen, that is Yacha, the king's father, that is Nana Jambibi. A lot of them died over there. So you can talk about 24 dying over there. But they had children and children's children. So when they returned, they were about almost 50.
So some died.
That's how it.
How was Kumasi that day when their king returning after 24 years?
Of course, it will be jubilation, and it was jubilation, and a huge jubilation.
Wow. And the British also continued to be amongst us.
Yes, they had taken over the country, and so in 1902, the war ended in 1901. It started in 1900, ended in 1901, and then the British had taken over the realms of affairs.
And they named here Gold Coast?
No, it was Asante.
Okay.
And then they had two nations, the Gold Coast and then Asante. So they administered Asante separately from the Gold Coast.
So Asante was separate.
Asante was what you call Bono East and Bono regions and Ahafo plus Ashanti region. All were what was called the Asante.
So when Prempeh the First came back, Prempeh the Second, was he also occupying some position?
No.
In Prempeh the First absence?
No. He was the chair of the Asante Kotoko Society.
Oh,
so
wow. Which was established in
1916. So he was the chairman of the Asante Kotoko Society.
So he knew stuff. He knew what was going on.
It was when his uncle died in 1931 that he took over first as Kumasehene and later as Asantehene. When the British agreed that okay, they had agreed that Ashanti should come back as a nation on its own. That was 1935.
So Ashanti became a nation.
Yes, it was a nation, but the British were not recognizing it as a nation. Now they agreed to recognize it as a nation.
That is when we had our flag, we had our national team, because it's all happening in the
Yes.
right? Is there anything we should learn, as in the younger generation and generations unborn, who will come and watch this video later? Is there anything we should learn from the life of Prempeh throughout his reign here in Ghana or in Gold Coast, going to Seychelles and coming back?
Yes, certainly. Prempeh I offered himself as a sacrifice for his kingdom to be free. That is what we have to learn. He also came back with the intention of establishing development. He came with the development agenda, even to the point of where he wanted some of the rivers like Ofin to be dredged and boats operating on it. That is,
the sea?
To the sea, yes.
Because it's not different from what Cheddar. It's not different from what he's saying, because he is talking about dredging the sea.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Wow.
It was there.
And people were bashing him.
Yeah, because he spoke in a term where people didn't understand him.
Okay.
I'll bring the sea to Kumasi. So people took it literally.
Okay, you should have explained.
Yes, so it was not explained. But that's what he meant. He wanted to dredge the rivers here, Ofin, you dredge Ofin to join Pra, and Pra enters the sea. So if you join them, then of course you have brought the sea to the region or to the state. That's what Nana Prempeh was aiming at. He also was interested in education because he advised the people to take their children to school.
Because he himself...
Yes, had schooled. So these are some of the things that suggest to you that we have a lot to learn from him.
You're still watching History Time with Teacher Kantanka. So, is there any benefit as a nation, as an Ashanti nation, or as a nation Ghana, that we can say that we got from the exile and the return of Prempeh and his subjects?
Yeah, he came with education, he came with development plans, he came with modernization of culture. All these are things that should be learned. He came as an author of a book. And so telling you education is very important. Again, we learned not only from our king, but we also learned the negative things from the British, and to know how to control ourselves, how to educate ourselves against some of the evil deeds of the British. Their divide and rule tactics, which made and are still made Ashanti the subject of hatred, because they played all the tribes against Ashanti. All these nations around Ashanti were played against Ashanti. So it still remains.
People still believe.
Yeah, so no, it's become part of them. So thus we must learn to discontinue. So also destroying culture and tradition, because this habit of using English names and speaking our language without bringing in English, that is the Chinglish, it has become part of us and we have to stop it. Today we are speaking English because we want those who do not speak our language to understand
what happened.
Yes. So that's why we're speaking in English. Otherwise,
we are proud.
So the British came And we also gained something from them. Schools, hospitals, and were all established by the British.
On the issue of the Christian religion, I think his coming as an Anglican person also promoted the Christian religion. So many people will feel proud that the Asante Hene is also going to church. So let me also go.
Yes, that's it. Like it or not, the English way of life has become part of our way of life. So we cannot do away with that all of a sudden. So it will remain with us, and we have to do away with it gradually.
Has he been honored enough? I want to end with that.
Yes, yes, his name is everywhere in history, and we are celebrating him. So that's an honor, and we should keep celebrating him.
Okay, so with Santehene ensuring that the new airport is named after him, you think it's in the right?
That is also an honor, big honor.
Okay, so we are ending here. I want you to give just a brief advice to the younger generations on the issue on how they should prioritize our Ashanti history and Ashanti culture, and ensuring that they take it down to their children and children's children so that it can be preserved.
Well, the Ashanti as we call it, is a union of states, and still politicians are working very hard to dissolve the union. That is what we have to be aware of, not to give ourselves up, to be driven to all directions. Yeah, we all have to agree that, okay, if you belong to your own, it is not an offense. So why would you like to be happy to be a member of NATO, a member of OAU, a member of West Africa, something, but to be a member of your own people called the Akan group, led by the Ashanti, has been a problem. It shouldn't be a problem because of the injection of hatred that has taken control over our whole life. But that, if proper care is not taken, can lead us to disaster. Hatred would end up even in war. When you come to Ashanti region, as the name stands, we have states like Kwabre, Seychelles, Adanse, Asante Achem, Ahafo is one region that is also part of the Ashanti Union. Then we have other states within the Bono region, like Sampa, like Fiapre, like Banda, the Tanubi Subing areas. They're all part of the Ashanti Kingdom.
That is now.
Now, then you go to the other side, that is Bono East.
Okay.
You have Nkuransa, you have other states coming together to be part of the Ashanti Kingdom. So we also have, even beyond that, you go to
Ivory Coast.
yes, they still see themselves as Ashanti Kingdom. But politicians don't want that. That is what we have to fight against.
It has been a lengthy discussion with teacher Kantanka, and the whole subject matter has been about our legendary 13th Asante King, King Agyemang Prempeh I, who offered himself as a sacrifice to be taken away to faraway Seychelles Island. And thankfully, he came back. The British wanted him to be installed as the Kumasi Hene. Little did they know that whoever becomes the Asante Hene automatically will start as a Kumasi Hene. So we still revered our king, and he died in 1931 for Prempeh II to take over. And to date, Asante is still thriving, ensuring that the history and the culture, the traditions of the Akan people still get intact or is intact. We'll be bringing you a whole lot of histories on this particular show called History Class on PAG TV, The Pride of Africa. If you've not subscribed to any of our channels, do so from now. It is PAG TV GH on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever. It is PAG TV GH. I am Adusi Poku, and special thanks to our crew. We have Abena Kwachua, we have Emmanuel Mosebunsu, and production head Emanuela Amankwa. We'll be meeting again. Thanks for watching.
The framing and Abuachi and San Debra, Mine Asokwara Mamponhine, Nian Sonam Saye, Otumfuo Santehine, Nimi Fahine, Ewukumasia. Yirohua Sobehe Pak TV. Afianso Ubehuna Amamre, Eni Amanie, Epi, Ewu.
We are the pride of Africa.
Pesa Usri Amamre, Ni Amanie, Eni Nyoma, Efa, Ghana, Ni Africa as a whole. Bia Funny TV and to Park TV. No she. Na wo hwa ubeti amamre ani amane ase. Melamase.
Yeah. We are the pride of Africa. We give you
PAC TV, the pride of Africa.